The next day I went into the net and checked the NCTV server. Thankfully, thanks to my perk-gained knowledge, I had slipped a few backdoors into the server as I breached it, so the netrunners never noticed me peeking in again. I was able to slip in without issue and double-check the information. Nothing yet. Yuto's subscription was still set to the Japantown apartment. I decided not to waste time trying to find him through cameras considering the sparseness of good cameras in Arroyo, and instead focusing on other things. It turns out, I had a problem, and it was time to solve it. While at the Netrunner cave, I opened up the batch of files that Yoko had sent over to me, and pulled out a quick hack I hadn't really considered using before. Vehicle hacks. They were different from normal quick hacking, but vehicles did have computers that could be hacked just like anything else. They just also tended to have much stronger defenses, but almost never outright black ice. The idea was simple. I was going to take a quick hack that would make the onboard computer think there was an emergency and brake hard. That way no one would be getting away from me like yesterday again. The hack, like most of the stuff Yoko had sent me, was pretty rough. Full of extra data, or just terrible coding cycles. I ripped out the important bit and started rewriting it from the ground up, not in the real world, but in my server lobby. That way I could also sit down and finally do some more work for my Tachikoma as well. I hadn't been giving it the full attention it needed, so I was doing that while programming. Sitting in my server lobby, feet up on the high-end table, one hand programming what I needed my Tachikoma to do, cleaning up junk data, while the other worked on the hack, was a pretty fun experience. The cooling cap kept my cyberdeck cool enough I wasn't having any issues, and it felt good to just sit and do some work. Why the hell does this code have data on heating seats? It doesn't fucking matter. I yelled, planning on sending Yoko a piece of my mind for always giving me such garbage to work with. The hack really was simple enough. I would breach in using my own skills, so my knowledge from strong breach would let me just hammer through a vehicle's defenses. This let me slim down the program by removing all the insertion protocols from the hack. Then I would dump it into the car's processor. It would slam on the brakes thinking the engine was damaged. It created a very slim program in the end, but I continued tinkering with streamlining the process. The many differences in car manufacturers was an annoyance, but even the cheapest Galena had an onboard computer. I just had to adjust the hack to be able to activate regardless of system. Locking down brakes was actually really easy, because anti-lock brakes all used computer systems. I glanced over at the Tachikoma. It was currently set up in a server section. A small maze I had created, and it was navigating it. For the first time, the Tachikoma truly needed to use its intelligence to explore the maze, learning to move in a space that wasn't clear to the poor thing. Well, right now it was just going in circles, only taking the left path. I sighed and sent an adjustment order, and it stopped letting the process get logged, realizing it wasn't going anywhere. Then it took the left turn again. Well, it was a learning process. I slurped up some noodles, staring blankly at the television that was playing above the ramen bar. Boring news, but whatever, it wasn't like I was actually focused on it. I was just decompressing from staying 12 hours inside the net. It wasn't terrible. And I felt okay, but I definitely felt a little burned out. I had checked on the NCTV connection again before logging out, but didn't get anything. It wasn't that much of a surprise. He had gotten in a nasty car crash, and I probably shot him at least once. Healing, especially fast healing, was expensive. He was probably put together with tape and spit and left to heal naturally. I doubt 6th Street cared that much about him after all. Whatever plot they had for him was likely purely selfish. Yuto was a dead man walking. I could only wonder if he knew it already. News flicked onto commercials, and I ignored the stupid thing trying to sell me buck a slice and continued to zone out. Stupid Yuto. I could be doing more important things than hunting his gonk ass down. Suddenly notes startled me out of my reverie and I jerked as I stared at the TV. At the sounds of old brass and thrumming strings. A song I recognized because the only reason it existed in Night City was because of me. Mr. Stud, all night. Every night. Don't be soft, upgrade to version 2.3 now. I spit ramen. Noodles escaped me, and one particular one went straight up my sinuses and out my nose. No. No, 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 no. Not Tank. They couldn't have. They used Tank to sell cyber dicks? Hey, watch it. The owner of the stand yelled at me, waving a ladle at me, but I was too busy coughing and hacking and pulling a noodle out of my nose. This was. I stood up. Appetite completely killed. Tossing some eddies to the chef, I stomped out. What the fuck? I knew Hiromi wouldn't be entirely sympathetic, so instead I went looking for a kinder touch. It's not right. I whined, and Misty nodded at me slowly, fighting off her obvious amusement as she tried to be understanding. I can understand how it might be embarrassing, Misty added, doing her best to keep her lips from twitching. I'm really not feeling the love, Misty. I grumbled, but her grin just got a little wider. It's not something I have any advice for, but if you want to hear something, let it go. It's gone and done. You already said you didn't feel like you could do anything about it, right? I grumbled, poking at the mystic stuff Misty had on her desk, but in the end she was right. I wasn't going to go killing people for this, and I had sold it. I just didn't expect to hear my song on A. I shook it off. It just sucks. Well, if you don't like it, you should make enough songs that you never have to mind if one of them is used for something you don't like. Misty offered almost too casually. I felt my eyes narrow as Misty did her best to continue to look casual. Did Hiromi put you up to this? I demanded quietly, and Misty finally broke, her forced casualness breaking into giggles. No, but she did mention about your big concert and all the songs you wrote. Misty said as she pouted at me. I wasn't invited? It isn't like that. I wasn't planning on inviting anyone. It was supposed to be just me really, but my chums have no respect for my imminent mental breakdowns. I grumbled, continuing to poke at the golden faux Buddha on her desk. I'll forgive you. If I get invited to the next one. I groaned, flopping onto the table. I'm not sure if there will be another time. This was supposed to be just a one-off thing. Misty very overdramatically hummed as I looked up from the Buddha to glare at her. Stop psychoanalyzing me. Me? Never, but your chakras fluctuate every time. Oh no, you don't. Calling it spiritualism doesn't change anything. I don't need a psychologist. Well, I probably do, but that's another story, and not for this. I just wanted the Muzichi make to not be about dicks. I said, and then sighed. And I only planned on it being a me thing. And if that is all it ever ends up, that's fine. But I did see the concert Brain Dance. I don't usually like them, but Hiromi gave me one and I checked it out. Uck. I whined, embarrassed. You had fun. I know, because I had fun, Misty said, and I puffed out my cheeks as I glared at her. I don't know what you are talking about. Okay. You don't have to accept your own feelings yet, but the longer you wait, the more your chakra will be thrown out of alignment. And if you can accept my own thoughts, I think you should explore this aspect of yourself, instead of trying to hide it away. I'll think about it. I grumbled, but Misty just smiled, as if she had already won, which annoyed me because she was likely right. Fine. I'm going to go check in with Vic, get an exam done while I'm here. I grumbled, and Misty just laughed at me, as I very obviously fled. Maybe Vic would commiserate with me? Then I considered Vic's dad energy, and I felt like he would probably laugh and tease me more than Misty. Best not to mention it. I felt looser after Vic checked me over. Routine maintenance was actually a pretty nice feeling. Well, that and Vic had poked me about how rough I was with my hands. I had worn down my grippers faster than normal. I looked at my new fingertips, plinking them together, enjoying the dull sound as the rubber-ish tips gave me extra grip. "Having fun?" a familiar voice called out, and I only took a second before flipping the bird at the approaching man. "That hurts, Hermanita," Jackie offered, hands to his chest pretending I had struck him, but his smile ruined it. "It's been a while, Jack. Going to see Vic?" "That's right. Got a delivery for the old man," he said, patting the bag in his hand, and I couldn't help but look at it curiously. "Yeah? What is it?" Can't reveal that, Hermanita. Jack's on the job. Confidential stuff," he said, waving his eyebrows, and I just quirked my own eyebrow back at him. "But if the old Ripper opens it, then it's up to him to keep it secret, eh?" I smiled as I turned and waved at the steps down to Vic's lair. I followed Jackie down, and Vic looked up at the sudden entrance, his smile turning deeper as he saw me and Jackie. "If you broke something already, I'm not fixing it," he said directly at me, and I just huffed as Jackie started chuckling just as loud. The two men's laughter sinking together into a mock track. "Whatever," I demanded, arms crossed, and glared until Jackie raised his arms in surrender. All right, Hermanita, put the phasers away," he begged, and then turned to Vic. "Delivery for you, you old Ripper. Compliments of the Dragonov. Jack, stop making up names for Mrs. Okada. She doesn't like it." Vic cut Jackie off, but took the bag and opened it up. "And as always, her contacts are good," Vic said. "What is it?" I asked, popping up at his side to try and peek in. But despite Vic's flinch at my sudden appearance, the glance inside the bag wasn't fun. "Oh, it's just some parts." "Hair, certainly nothing that will interest you, Motoko. Just some parts for a client," he said as he placed down the bag and started pulling out pieces. I took note of them, but it really was just civilian stuff. Even a canister of real skin. "Well, that's it for me," Jackie offered, stretching out. "Don't usually like being a courier, but..." Jackie trailed off, shrugging, and I nodded. Waikiko was like that. But considering Jackie was here, and I was still waiting on Yuto's reappearance. "Hey Jackie. Want to grab a drink on me?" I asked, and Jackie looked hesitant, obviously, but in the end he seemed to pull himself together. "I'm on my way back to the Coyote, meet me there?" "Sure." So this gonk is being hidden by 6th Street. "Heh, you certainly don't have much luck with them, do you?" Jackie joked as he tipped back his drink. "I guess not." I agreed, remembering the last time I had called on Jackie had been for trouble in Arroyo. "Don't suppose you have any 6th Street contacts that could find out why they are protecting Yuto?" "I know some tunes, and some gonks, sure," Jackie said, tipping back another swallow. "Don't listen to him, Jackie has tunes all over." Pepe the bartender cut in. The man smirked at Jackie's scoffing retort. "Jackie is good about making allies out of the strangest people," I said, thinking about V. "Yeah, well, this time I can't help. Everyone knows this is a 6th Street and Tiger thing. If I asked around, people'd start asking why I want to get involved," he said to me, and I nodded. "Thanks anyway," I said, but then I looked him over and decided to peel off the bandage. "You know, you never got back to me about working with me more." "I've been busy," he said pointedly, and I just nodded, letting it go. I wasn't here to push anyways, but if Jackie was satisfied doing courier work, which I knew he wasn't, well, if you ever need any backup, don't hesitate to call. But I still need to figure out this 6th Street thing. "Wait," he said, reaching out to touch my shoulder, but he didn't actually grab me. "Definitely seems like trouble. Gang politics, not just scraps between the pendejos at the bottom. Risky shit, Hermanita. You be careful. Be ready to bail at the first sign something is off." "I will, Jack. I got my tunes with me too. I'll be careful though." The older man nodded, and then seemed like he wanted to say more, But instead of continuing, he just reached over and slapped a meaty hand on my shoulder in goodbye. Motoko, I got him. Going to do some recon, but everyone should get ready. The message was sent. I had checked into the NCTV system again and found that Yuto had once again accessed his TV sub. It's always good that people are too stupid to really keep themselves off the net. I got the notifications back and then I sighed as I readied the next message. Motoko, I got Yuto's current position. Fujimura, excellent. I will assist. Motoko, feel free to send some people to come along if you want, but he isn't in a position to really get. I'm going to have to hit Yuto like this is an assassination. Sorry, you are just going to get a BD of his death. I doubt I'm going to be able to drag him out from where they got him hiding. Fujimura, very well. Just make sure the kill is obvious through the BD if you can. Motoko, that I can do. I rose up and stretched, disconnecting from my Netrunner chair. I had the address, it was time. I headed out to the Quadra already considering the best way to do this. I'll admit, I was pretty angry about this entire situation. From the start I didn't like it, and this had gone on long enough. I slipped into the Quadra after the short jog to the parking lot I had left her in. My chums had already sent me a marker for a meet-up point, but I was going to be a little late. I needed to do some scouting first. I borrowed a cheap-looking car as I traveled over. I knew my Quadra would stand out, since I had chased after Yuto in it last time. Since I knew where he was, and I knew how hard it would be to get close without being seen, I had come up with a brilliant plan. All right. Everything looks good. All right, Tashikoma-chan. We are synced up. Time to see what you can do. I whispered to it as I opened my car door and plopped it out on the dirt. This section of the city was dirty little suburbs of sorts. Run-down houses and apartment blocks packed around the canal, and that was what caused the problem. Yuto was in a house down in the canal, and I couldn't get anywhere near it without someone being able to see me. I scanned around with the Tashikoma as my actual body leaned back in the back seat. I had some practice using the Tashikoma, but this was going to be the first time I had given it a real test drive. I started moving, the Tashikoma's legs mostly noiseless on the grass besides a few difficulties keeping all four legs in mind. But I quickly got the hang of it, and crawled past the two run-down houses and looked down. The canal area was more than a 20-foot ramp down into another suburb. And that was where Yuto was. The house he was hiding out in was right there, but I had to get Tashikoma down there without breaking. Nothing for it. I climbed over to the incline and hunched down, and just let gravity take control. My Tashikoma didn't have any wheels installed yet, and so I winced a bit at the noise, but it wasn't overly loud for the area. Cars and people, and music played from radios filled the air, so as my little drone slipped down it only made a modicum of noise before hitting the end and rolling a bit. Using its arms I flipped it back onto its legs and looked around. Success. I scurried over to a pile of garbage to hide out in for a bit in case the noise had alerted anyone, but after a few minutes I slipped out and started towards the house. Tashikoma stealth. I actually started feeling pretty happy about this. The movement was working pretty well, and I was getting to use a piece of my arsenal that I hadn't gotten a chance to use yet. Crawling up to the back door, I connected into the back door, hacking through and accessing the controls. Unfortunately, it was a closed system, and wasn't connected to anything else, so I ran into the first problem. The Tashikoma was a prototype. And because of that, she had a bit of an issue. She couldn't hear anything. I hadn't actually installed any sort of microphone receiver in the prototype. Something I decided I would have to fix ASAP, but until then I would have to rely on my other senses, and whatever I could hack into. To be careful, I retreated and then had the door open. Waiting for a while to see if anyone came to see why the door opened. A few minutes later it looked clear and I had the Tashikoma slide inside. Looking over the kitchen I entered, I took in the situation and grinned. With a quick motion, I had the Tachikoma open a cupboard and slip inside, as I started hacking into all the electronics in the house. Most things had some sort of microphone, and so without much difficulty I hacked into the radio that was on the kitchen counter, and suddenly with a bit of digital work I was able to hear. The sound of a TV blaring in another room made me smirk. I did a quick sweep to check for any cameras or something, but this was just a residence, not a gang base. It wasn't going to be that easy. Now that I could hear, I slipped back out of the cupboard, gently crawling across the kitchen, doing my best to stay in the shadows. Funnily enough, while it wasn't perfect, ninjutsu was transferring well enough I was able to be Ninja Tachikoma. Considering how useful this was, I might have to start running the AI through some stealth programs teaching it how to sneak around. I peered out of the kitchen into a hallway and realized the sound was coming from my right. A living room space set up with a large entertainment space, and the man I was after sprawled across the couch. Along with 2 goons as well. Target confirmed. I considered a few things. Could I hack Yuta right now to kill him? I didn't have anything installed that was lethal though. I grumbled, if I had a more lethal hack this entire issue could be resolved right now. Shaking it off, I noticed something interesting. The 2 6th Street goons that were also in the room. They weren't there hanging out with Yuto. They were there guarding him. And I don't think it was for his protection. Yuto had the look of someone being held. I don't think whoever was running this little trouble between 6th Street and the TC really cared for Yuto. In fact, considering he had failed twice, he might be on the Gonks shit list. I moved the Tachikoma under a coffee table in the corner and settled in, and I started hacking. I knew Yuto's contact was Roger, but I wanted to know what the fuck was really going on. So I quietly slipped into the goons' agents. It was going to take a while, but I wanted all their calls and records. Knowledge was power, and I would like to find out who was trying to cause so much trouble between the gangs. Motoko. Hiromi called as I finally arrived at the restaurant that was in city center, just across the bridge from Arroyo. Hey Hiromi. Sorry I'm late. I thought they'd send someone else. I mentioned, looking at June and Akari sitting in the booth behind my tombs. I was ordered to come. June offered weakly. Far too weak for the man that I knew. It's fine, June-ni. You won't have to do anything. I scoped out where Yuto is currently staying, and honestly, neither you or Akari can really help. I pulled up a picture I had taken and sent it to everyone. Instantly Ichi noticed the issue, Malcolm right behind him. June was frowning heavily. That's right in the middle of 6th Street territory. Practically impenetrable. Especially for a couple of very obvious tiger claws. I agreed, and everyone was angry to hear it. Rancho Coronado's strange little section that was technically the dam's wash zone, but it had been completely converted into a little suburb. And every inch of it belonged to 6th Street. The place was packed. Massively populated, and nearly impossible to get into without everyone and anyone knowing about it. It was also ironically where Maine had set up his little hideout. There was no easy way to do this without going up close. So that was what I was going to do. So that's the plan. I finished and got nods from my crew, but looks of concern from June and Akari. That's dumb. June finally said. How are you going to get out? You can't do this. I'll have a car parked close by. Malcolm will be my wheels in, Ichi and Hiromi will be parked here. I highlighted the location and sent the update to everyone's agent. If everything goes well, I'll be out before they can do much. If something goes wrong, and I get chased, Malcolm will be racing to meet up with Ichi, and then Ichi and Hiromi will have the heavy weapons ready. This is crazy. Do it. Akari said, reminding me that she was crazy, because this plan was crazy and only a crazy person would do it. Our eyes met, and I nodded. Oh yeah. I was not happy with this situation. Yuto needed to die. Plain and simple. Going in alone is dumb. I'll come with you. June started, but I cut him off. Denied. I refused, crossing my arms in an X. You are too slow, and too obvious. This is absolutely doable. This time, speed will be my advantage. They can't formulate a good escape if I hit them faster than they could hope to respond. I won't fuck up this time. I know exactly where Yuto is. I have a direct camera looking at him. I could acknowledge last time I had been too hot-headed, rushing in myself instead of doing some searching around before we hit Yuto. But this was different. I had properly scouted the place this time. I looked around at everyone. Any questions? I asked, and only Malcolm raised his hand. Yeah, I think we should call in more backup. Rebecca's a good shooter. Let's do that right now. I agreed with a smile, having once again forgotten that I had more than my small group of chums ready for war. Time to fuck shit up. Dash. Malcolm's Caliburn got a lot of attention, and that was intentional. I could have used the borrowed car I had picked up before, but I wanted eyes on the ride instead of on me. With the Tachikoma in place, I already had all the control over the situation I could ever need. As we drove up, I reconnected to the signal, and saw that while a few things had moved, the three of them were still downstairs watching TV. It was time. I was in full kit, although I had considered going either way, but this was 6th Street we were dealing with. I didn't want to end up shot and not having something to protect me. Besides, as much as I wanted to do this as a full stealth run, that wasn't likely just because of all the eyes on Rancho Coronado to start with. And there was a part of me that just wanted to send a message. You can't protect some gonk from me. That was what a part of my mind wanted to tell 6th Street. I had pushed it away and ignored it, because getting this done and getting out was more important. But it would always be there. I shook it off as Malcolm hit the point and I nodded to him. Go time. Everyone get ready. Then I opened the door of his Caliburn that had slowed to a crawl and leapt. I was up on the upper level above the canal, on a street that had a few run-down houses overlooking the lower suburbs. As I jumped, I raced between two of the run-down homes, and in the backyard was a drop leading straight into the backyard of the house Yuto was in. I hit the canal edge and slid down in an easy motion, riding my momentum until I nearly hit the bottom as I leapt again. 100 athletics XP gained. While in the air, the Tachikoma camera gave me access and I pushed through the hacks. The two gonks with Yuto both went blind and shocked in a few seconds and started crying out as they dropped to the ground. I saw through Tachikoma's feed the moment Yuto seemed to realize what had happened, and how much danger he must be in. He rose up and made it 2 steps towards the exit of the living room as he tried to escape. I had activated my Sandevistan as I reached the door. Speed was my ally. I caught him before he even made it a few steps, sliding through the kitchen and into the living room as I brought up my copperhead. I took a moment to really get a good look at him. There was a moment where he saw me. His eyes widened, he wouldn't know who I was. My helmet blocked my face, but for just a second I considered the fact he had a past with who I had once been. Motoko Kusanagi, the wild child. Then I lined up my shot and pulled the trigger. The copperhead barely jiggled in my arms as I watched the bullet shoot out in almost slow motion. My Sandy wasn't that fast after all. A moment later I turned off the Sandy and it was over. Yuto crumpled. I walked over and just to be sure, shot him 3 more times in the head. 250 XP gained. Then I was gone. Ignoring the 2 screaming 6th Street gonks on the floor. I grabbed my Tachikoma and rushed out the front of the house. My escape car already waiting for me. A little Mizutani Shion Riva. One of the cars that we had stolen from the Raffen. This one was one that Hiromi had nabbed, although she barely used it. But it wasn't my Quadra. I could hear people pointing out my appearance, and I knew I wouldn't have much time. I slipped inside, throwing the Tachikoma into the passenger seat before hitting the gas. I struggled to get my seatbelt on as I floored it down the street. There would be people chasing after me, but I had come up with an exit strategy. I drifted around the corner of the street, avoiding a few civilian cars, with a gentle flick of the steering wheel sending me around them, and then the engine rumbled and I was gone. Straight up the ramp out of the canal and onto the highway. Traffic was pretty bad, which wasn't a good thing, but I wasn't staying on the road for long. The Xion's ending whined as I jerked onto the shoulder, ignoring the honking and angry looks from those slowed-in heavy traffic as I hit the gas, and took the first ramp back off. New Pacific Highway was the road that went past the Biotechnica Flats, and out to the customs checkpoint. But it was also a long-distance road that would let me get out of the city and lose anyone following me because without any trouble I hit the gas straight down and flew down the road. I'm out and on my way. Target neutralized. I finally sent over the open line. Great job, Motoko. Hiromi cheered. So, Yuto? June asked, suddenly, and I went quiet. I made sure it was painless. I offered back the only thing I could really say to comfort my brother. I checked my rear view, not seeing any 6th Street cars chasing after me. Likely left behind in the traffic if they tried. I shifted gears to get that little bit more speed out of the Xion. Dash. I pulled into the parking lot, seeing Malcolm already here, which was a relief. As I parked, I noticed a few familiar Tiger Claw vehicles parked nearby, including Fujimura standing over by June and Akari. I guess he had wanted to come check. Walking over, I pulled out a shard and offered it to him. Proof of the contract completion. BD recording. I explained, and he nodded pleased and pocketed it. You solved a lot of trouble with this. I'll make sure everyone knows that Junikiru is no longer under investigation. He offered back and looked to June. June that looked tired. I walked over and hesitated. I had killed one of his chums. Should I touch him? Would that be a good or a bad thing? Should I just let him take some time? But it was taken out of my hands as he reached out and gently pulled me into a side hug. Don't overthink it, he said finally. I'm not. I wish it didn't have to go this way, but I don't blame you for doing it, Motoko. Yuto made his choice. Indeed. Fujimura offered, but he wasn't saying it to be gentle to June. Yuto went too far, and he is now an excellent example for the future. He offered, and then looked at June with an almost glare. I had thought for a moment Fujimura was just being ignorant of June's difficulty here, but that wasn't the case. He was actually well aware, but trying to berate June about it. I felt my own glare towards the man come on, but instead of what I expected, June stood up straighter. Understood, Fujimura-sama. Thank you. He offered back, and then he turned to Akari, and the few other gonks that Fujimura had with him. Some guards of some sort. Yuto is dead. Drinks are on me. He called out, and the gonks cheered, and Akari nodded. I watched June's back as he walked away, stepping into a position of mob leader. My confusion was pretty strong. June wasn't hurt about Yuto, but he just was. Then I saw it. June looked away while in the middle of the group, and his face told it all. Hurt and pain. He wasn't unbothered, he was playing his part. June has to pretend to be okay with this, proof that he wasn't involved. I spoke quietly. That's right. Fujimura spoke back just as quietly. This will get out. Make rounds, that the Oni celebrated the death of the traitor. It will be good for his rep, clear him of some of the suspicion. I watched on, and realized I would have to do something. But not here. Not when June was trying to regain his position with the Tigers. The very idea of it sickened me more than before, but that was June's choice, not mine. Instead, I turned away and headed over to my chums who had been hanging back. Hiromi was smiling proudly as I approached, and Malcolm looked very pleased by even the random people stopping at the gas station checking out his car despite all the tiger claws around. Ichi nodded, but Rebecca pouted. I thought there would be more shooting. There might have been. I offered instead. I was surprised at how well this had gone. I expected a car chase and a shootout and everything too. Come on. We just finished a big gig. Food's on me. I called out, and thankfully that was the right call. Rebecca cheered and Malcolm joined her. Everything was okay. Not great. Not perfect, but this was Night City. Sometimes good enough was good enough. Dash? Motherfucker. I hissed as Itchy, Malcolm and Hiromi all grabbed me and held me back as I kicked at the stupid advertisement. Whoa, Motoko? Malcolm called out, absolutely shocked at how I had just been beating the shit out of the advertisement. Calm down. Itchy called out, but I shook a bit. You calm down. I hissed. Unfortunately, I wasn't interested in hurting my chums, and so they managed to drag me away a bit. What's got into you? Malcolm asked, and I shook my head, not wanting to answer. Fuck yeah. A moment later a voice called out, and even I stopped pulling to look over as Rebecca drop-kicked the ad as well, laughing hysterically. Rebecca, why are you trying to destroy it? Hiromi asked, and Rebecca wiped herself down. Huh? Oh, I don't have any reason. Motoko was doing it, so I thought I might as well, you know? She said, looking like she was going to continue smashing the thing, but Hiromi shook her head and looked to me. That was your song, wasn't it? Why are you freaking out? Hiromi asked, and I stopped pulling and looked at her with a glare. I watched as she shifted back a bit. I wasn't angry with Hiromi though. I was just angry. Tank, isn't dick ad music? I demanded, and Hiromi just blinked in surprise at my words. Then Malcolm started laughing hysterically. Itchy looked away from me as he let go, and his shoulders were shaking. That was your song? Malcolm managed to gasp out, and I growled, looking back at the damaged ad sign. I'm going to break it. I growled, and Hiromi jumped on me again. Rebecca just started cackling and looked about ready to start smashing again. We have to go. NCPD will be here soon. Come on. Hiromi demanded, and I growled, but when Rebecca whooped and started running, I figured it was fine. To my surprise, I could hear the sirens of the NCPD already starting to come closer. I guess advertisement boards were something they took seriously. I glanced back and took a moment to hack into the advertisement's camera system and deleted the recording. No reason to let the NCPD target us. Then I started running, and soon I was laughing along with everyone as we ran through an alley to escape from the cops. We ended up down the block and then through a little shopping strip, stopping to let Itchy grab some candy from a vendor and then continued on. I wasn't sure where we were going, as we weren't really going anywhere, but that was okay. The five of us were just walking through the city. Rebecca was ahead of us, arms behind the back of her head as she walked along, and all of us were just shooting the shit. Then a familiar jingle came over a nearby ad again. Motherfucker! I yelled as my chums leapt on me to keep me from committing murder on another ad board.